the bad actor here, in my opinion, is the WNBA and Kathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner, for not standing up for women, number one, and having their little symposium, whatever they did with their task force, and coming back and saying, this is what a woman is. A woman is born, not worn. A woman isn't something you can put on at the end of the day at your leisure because you want to opt into women's sports or you want to be validated. It's very simple, and the W and the WNBA, they should be able to get it. That's just my take. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another LGBT discussions. This is a roundtable discussion, and we're doing a part two of our WNBA analysis. So I'm joined today with Arianne, Sylvia, and Scott from the group, and really excited to hear your thoughts about what we're about to see. So let's begin. All right, so we're kicking off with a video from Voices with Vicky.
And this has to do with the WNBA. Let's check it out.
The family. I just left the Sky Fever game, and the amount of visible transphobia those FIFA fans brought into Chicago was absolutely disgusting. Let me show you. Let me show you one. Which lesbians? What lesbians?
So somebody has a sign here that says lesbians for Sophie, and she's about to make some more remarks about this and how it's transphobic and bigoted and terrible. And my question for you is why? Why? Do you not understand what the definition of a lesbian is? Do you not understand what lesbians are? Do you not understand that lesbians kind of represent the female category and that it's an exclusive same-sex attraction to female-loving female? And no, it doesn't include trans women. And I know you're going to say, oh, that's bigotry, you're transphobic. No, I think it's homophobic as that you think a whole ass man can somehow transform into a lesbian and change their sexual orientation. That's the most homophobic, misogynistic, sexist thing I've ever heard in my life. And yet these people, they stand 10 toes down for this stuff and then have the audacity to call these people names for standing up for women in sports. Unbelievable.
We ain't doing that around here. All are welcome here. Take that politic, that hateful rhetoric.
How is it political on the biological reality end of things? You're the one that holds a political identity. I'd like to bet you anything they don't understand what the reclamation was for Queer Nation, what they're actually saying, how they're actually behaving, who they're actually simping for. They're living in this other world where everything is based on gender stereotypes, where everything is based on some social definition, okay? And then there's the rest of us who don't live in that world, who are sick and tired of people trying to push that world onto us. And now you're going to give this woman just for being a lesbian and standing up for women and girls.
Back to Indiana. Go get in your car and go back to Indiana with that. We don't want that.
With what?
And then the homie Nora had had enough. The game had ended and she had had enough.
No, she's not.
There's no trans people in the league. This is complete gaslighting. Number one, there has been a trans person in the league. It was a trans man or a non-binary person. I can put them up on the screen to show you. So someone who identifies as trans has been in the WNBA, but the trick here is, guys, it's a woman, it's a female that was identifying as trans in the league. So that's a different conversation. These people are deliberately using trick language and saying things like this isn't happening, or it's not going to happen, or it hasn't happened. Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. But if you're simping for it, you're cheering for it, you're saying, I'll do it, and there are certain players in the WNBA who are welcoming this, yeah, that means you're welcoming men into the WNBA, because the only way to be a trans woman is you have to be a man.
Okay, so she carries on quite a bit more. And the video keeps going because they keep antagonizing this lesbian in the crowd. And that just really stood out to me. Here's a lesbian in the crowd that's cheering for simple sign that just says lesbians for Sophie. And that is transphobic. What do y'all think about that?
I think it's misguided to say that trans-identified people aren't coming for the league. I think they are, and I think that's going to be a big win if they get in it. The trans movement is all about validation and steps towards validation. A trans-identified man in the WNBA is nothing but validation for the trans movement. See where we are now, see where we can go. That's all that means. And for those who say that this isn't happening or this isn't going to happen, that is the aim. There is nothing that will stop the trans train from trying to go to places where women are. That's why this just doesn't make sense to me how someone could say this isn't happening or this has never happened. It is happening. It's going to happen. It's going to be tried. So I think Vicky is awesome, and I think it's great that she showed that, because it shows that fans are very polarized by this, and some of them are really in their own world when it comes to what they think is actually going on.
I think there's a playbook here, which is when something hasn't happened yet, so trans-identified male in WNBA, people go, "Oh, well, why are you so worried? Like they're not there. Why are you making such a big fuss about it?" And then when they are there, they turn around and say, "So what?" I mean, it's disingenuous. It's a gaslighting playbook about how to dodge attention, like how to deflect the problem entirely. The other thing I'd like to bring up, this whole like when the woman in the video was like, "Well, what lesbians?" I, this is part of the groupthink playbook too, where people will say something like, well, there's a particular narrative that becomes common in a community, like lesbians, and it keeps being echoed over and over again. And it's not because everyone agrees with it. There are people who disagree, but they feel afraid of speaking out. And so all the people who have jumped on the narrative bandwagon didn't get surprised when they see these people that disagree with them. And I see this all the time. If you're in like a particular place that's known for being very political one way or the other, like I come from a very left-wing environment, you see this all the time with people going like, "Well, I didn't know anyone voted for Trump," or "I didn't know any one of my friends voted for Trump." You probably did. It's just that they were afraid of saying anything. I've seen this play out a lot.
Well, I think it's interesting that lesbians for Sophie or lesbians support Sophie is considered transphobic. And, I don't know if it's the supporting Sophie part or if it's the lesbian for Sophie part, but I feel like lesbians are inherently transphobic because we are exclusively female oriented. Therefore, it is transphobic towards any man that identifies as a woman and identifies as a lesbian. A lesbian just existing would be transphobic because her very nature rejects the man's femaleness and lesbianness. So, yeah, I guess that sign is very transphobic because not only did it say they support Sophie, but it was a lesbian doing it. So that's like a double whammy of transphobia right there.
One of the main ways that all of this kicked off was also with Enes Kanter Freedom and Royce White declaring for the WNBA. So these are two former NBA players who have declared their intention to participate in the 2027 WNBA draft as women because they identify as women for the purposes of women's basketball. So we'll play this clip for you now.
According to Article 13, Section 1A of the WNBA Collective Bargaining Agreement, quote, "Only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA." Seems clear, wouldn't you say? Yes, until the debate comes about what qualifies as a woman. That is where the ridiculousness of our society has come to. That is what they're challenging. This is Enes Kanter Freedom. Listen to what he said.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, that I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2027. I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices. I am simply asking that the current rules be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception. And I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles. See you at training camp.
By the way, for those of you who want to summarily dismiss Enos Cantor Freedom and act like he has absolutely nothing of significance at all to say, I'd like you to keep in mind he was born in Switzerland, raised in Turkey, became a United States citizen in 2021 and legally changed his name to Enos Cantor Freedom. He had become a prominent political and human rights activist, particularly through criticisms of the Turkish government and China, where he was in the United States, incredibly fearful for his life for years. Just want to remind y'all of that. So taking a political position is not foreign to him, just so we're clear. The other guy that spoke about this is Royce White. This is Royce White speaking about the WNBA. Listen to him.
Earlier this week, I made the announcement. I'm transgender. I'm a woman. I identify as sometimes identifying as a woman for purposes of basketball, professional basketball. So I'll be declaring for the WNBA draft in 2027 as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, sounds like mockery. It sounds like all of these things, but keep in mind, their announcement were framed as challenges to the WNBA's transgender player eligibility rules. The key factual distinction that we have to point out, the current WNBA collective bargaining agreement says only players who are women are eligible, but it does not further define women or specify criteria involving gender identity, sex assigned at birth, hormone levels, or physical characteristics. It also does not say that self-identification alone automatically makes a player eligible. So because that's open for debate, it required a response from WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, who sent a memo to teams last Friday saying the issue would be discussed by a task force of team presidents and general managers. The WNBA separately defended inclusion and condemned hate while saying the union, quote, will not be used as political pawns. Here's Stephen A. talking. It's too damn late.
It's too damn late.
I agree, it's too late. The cat is out of the bag. And I have to say, first off, I think the WNBA's response was incredibly transphobic. I think they really need to take a lesson and understand that if the woke mantra states, and this is what a lot of this is built on, if someone says they're trans, they're trans. And no one from the woke side is saying what they just said was transphobic at all. And I think that is just hilarious because they want their cake and they want to eat it too. These two brave men, women, trans people coming out and declaring their interest in order to play for the WNBA, and then to be labeled, what is the term they used? They were labeled bad actors?
Bad actors, bad faith
actors. I mean, they don't even see the transphobia that they have or the ridiculousness of their position. I mean, who are they to say that these two brave, pert people can't simply be their true selves and want to play sports, because sports is for everybody. But my question is, what objective standard separates bad faith male claims from good faith male claims? I don't think that's been told. I mean, what evidence is required? Who decides? What is the test for sincerity? I mean, the more the WNBA speaks, the more questions there are. They're digging a hole that they eventually will not be able to get out of.
And let me just share real quick, the statement that you're referring to, Scott, is the reply from the WNBA. So they have had the meeting now, and this is what they came up with. They said, today's meeting covered a wide range of topics, including ongoing discussions on transgender athletes and the continued hate and vitriol directed at players online. We will continue to engage all league stakeholders in the coming weeks and months. We will approach these important conversations thoughtfully and in alignment with the values of our league. There are no immediate eligibility matters affecting the WNBA, and we strongly denounce the bad faith efforts to use these topics to demean or marginalize others.
So by asking an organization to clarify or be precise in their rules is an act of marginalization?
It seems to be not just the marginalizing that in that way, but for these men to claim a trans identity, that is also the bad faith action, that they're demeaning and demoralizing the whole transgender community by making a farce of what it is to be trans. But what's the difference between Enes Kanter Freedom and any of the trans activists that are in our mentions calling us transphobic for knowing the difference between the sexes?
Well, and call me crazy, but what about the demeaning and offensive marginalization that women face when men try to claim that they're women? I mean, it's like that was the first thing that happened and nobody cared. So now we're supposed to care when men marginalize other men by pretending to be men who are pretending to be women. Like it's, it's a headache.
This is so good. The takedown of the inconsistency in the logic. I always thought one of the best questions to ask to someone who was part of the trans women or women crowd is there ever a circumstance where you would not take someone's gender identity, their stated gender identity, as the truth? Because if the answer to that question is yes, there are some circumstances, well, then please specify what they are. And if the answer is no, well, how is that different from, like, is there any other situation on the planet where you would always accept someone's statement at face value? Because almost any other circumstance, we'd acknowledge that there are some situations where people lie. So why would we ever draw an exception for the trans issue? And one response that I often hear from the trans women or women crowd as to why they'd always accept someone's gender identity as a transgender identity is that trans people are so utterly marginalized and lead such unhappy lives due to that marginalization that no one would ever have an incentive to fake that identity, that it would just bring too much suffering upon them and prejudice upon them. And clearly now, with this whole, well, you can do that in bad faith, clearly that excuse doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so now we're going to listen to Martina Navratilova on Piers Morgan.
Incredibly, some of America's biggest female sports stars, like Megan Rapinoe, completely disagree. Right? She went on The View 2 weeks ago, and she said this.
They're using this as a wedge issue because we love sports and, you know, we don't want our little girls to be unsafe in sports. And it's like, unsafe from who? But okay. Yeah. But now we're using this as like an overarching thing when really what we're attacking women. We're saying, if you look like this as a woman, you can play. If you look like this as a woman, there's a bill in Washington happening right now that's going to require all girls, just like full stop, to go through a sex test, an invasive, like, examining their genitals to see if they're a woman.
Yeah.
And that has not worked out well historically for people to do that.
We know what that means. Black girls are going to get questioned more, and they're going to get questioned first. Who's doing the examination?
Also, who wants to subject themselves to that?
And so they're going to see a pullback. They don't like women in sports because it helps us with confidence and power. And we see so many women in the C-suite played elite level sports. It's just great for you physically and all of it. But it's an attack on women in society.
I mean, aside from the fact she's factually wrong about the genital exams, Washington Initiative only requires a doctor's science certificate of biological sex using reproductive anatomy, genetic makeup, or testosterone levels. A cheek swab can determine sex. No genital exam is required. So she's wrong on fact about that. But this idea that keeping biological men out of women's sports, Martina, is an attack on women in society. What's your message to Megan Rapinoe?
Well, think about that logic. It is so illogical. It is just so far out. It's so crazy. And by the way, her team lost to a team of 15-year-old boys. You know, the women top Olympic team lost to a 15-year-old boys team, like 5-2 or something. They got whipped. I just don't know where she's coming from, that she really doesn't pay attention. Again, exaggerate the issue. What if 5 boys get on the women's team? Now, 5 girls did not get on the women's team. And by the way, that team is going to win. I don't get it. What upsets me is that people don't get educated better about the issues. And then just the eye test, right? And by the way, I am muscular. I'll be 70 in 2 months. I still have pretty good guns and I haven't done anything. Because that's my genetic makeup. I've always been very strong. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. And I worked my ass off. But no matter how hard I work, I still cannot compete with the weakest guy on the ATP. I still can't bench press 200 pounds, So I'm just disappointed with Megan that she's like, feeling this way and basically pulling up the ladder after she retires. Yeah, it's and the genital test really that was never the case. Never, ever.
No. She is full of crap, I'm afraid.
She is full of crap, I'm afraid. Yeah, so this was interesting to see. The audio quality isn't the best because she was remoting into his show, and this is a video of the video. But the point remains, this any male that makes it on a team displaces the females that would have been on the team otherwise, and that is one of the biggest takeaways.
And
not just one. That knocks the entire row down. That affects hundreds and hundreds of girls and women. It's not just that one player. Everybody gets knocked down a peg. That's how it affects way more than just that person.
And the way that she scoffed at the safe from who, keep women safe, from injury, from literal contact sport injury. I mean, forget the whole predator male in the female locker room watching women undress. We can just forget about that for 1 second because that is an issue. But let's just talk about the contact sport danger of having a male body interacting with female bodies in a contact sport. It infuriates me as someone who played soccer, who knows how physical that game can get. The idea that I would be up against a male, whether or not he had taken loads of estrogen or what, it doesn't matter. I want to play with other females. That's the category I am in. If I want to join an intramural co-ed league, then I'll do that. But if I'm in the female league, I better be playing against females. Sorry, I got a little emotional there. Sports is important to me. It's important to, you know what? No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. All right? I have a right to be aggravated as somebody who loves sports, who loves watching sports, playing sports, and who's infuriated that little girls are having to see men take the spots of professional women and then have to be told that you have to be okay with it or you're a bad person. Also, you have to be okay with sharing locker rooms or you're a bad person. It's just so misogynistic and sexist. It makes me sick.
One other thing that she says that I really take issue with is they repeat the lie over and over. People are going to be looking at other people's genitals. If that is true, that's called a physical, and everyone needs a physical. And the second point is, by the time I finish this sentence, a cheek swab has already been taken and bottled, and people are moving on with their lives. The repeated lie that that's going to happen, why can't people just fact check things? I don't think The View knows what fact checking means.
I have done a genetic test.
Oh.
I can tell you it was one of the easiest tests I have ever done in my life. I would much rather get a genetic test done than have to get any shot, get a pap smear, do any of those urine drug tests that athletes are subject to on a regular basis. It is such a BS red herring that, oh, it's so intrusive. It's complete BS. Stop gaslighting us. And in an age in which more and more and more Americans and people in the world are taking genetic tests just to find out about all their ancestors and stuff, people aren't going to believe that, okay? The other thing I'd like to point out is what was this with Megan Rapinoe playing the race card? What, seeing
Thank
black
you.
girls,
Thank you.
black girls somehow don't have the same genetics or anatomy as white girls? What?
Or that they're going to be
No problem.
considered more manly because, you know, in her mind, black women are more masculine than white women, which is so fucked up.
It's racist in its own right that Megan Rapinoe's even making that assumption.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different things in that clip that are just wrong and terrible. So I'm glad you all called all of that out. So I'm gonna move to a different lesbian now because, Megan Rapinoe, we know Megan Rapinoe is a lesbian. Gabby Williams, lovely lesbian in the WNBA. I have clips also of her just like really embracing the gay, which is a big deal because last season her relationship with Marina Johannes was very much under wraps. They were not out. It was quiet. So now it's very much the opposite. She's very much out and very much embracing the LGBTQ, unfortunately. But this is a video of Gabby Williams' comments on the trans issue.
I think it's trans rights right now is our new battle. That's what I think I was saying, that like the battles have changed. Oh, yes. You know, like our intentions been the same, but now the environment has changed. We see trans people's rights being, stripped away from them. There's a lot of discourse around trans athletes and where they can compete in. I would welcome a trans athlete on my team or against my team anytime. I don't think it's a problem in the world. It's just another way to kind of attack trans people.
All right. It's your opinion. It's your opinion.
We've seen players like Lasia Clarendon who stepped into that forefront and have been brave enough and courageous enough to kind of step up. So I guess that's the next battle that we have to fight as athletes.
So this is Maurice from KTV highlighting Gabby Williams' statements about inclusion of trans athletes.
Something tells me she hasn't thought very deeply about what that means. And in her mind, it's just like including any other woman, but men are not women. And it's already not legal for women who take steroids to be in the league. So that excludes trans men from participating. But I really like it's so sweet. Like I feel like, her heart's in the right place, but it's like, have you actually thought about what this means? Do you understand what you are advocating for or the repercussions? No. I think you're just too excited to be a good person or be seen as a good person. But really you're excluding women and girls and making it more dangerous for players.
I think that's right. I think that's a very generous take for you to make, Sylvia, but I'm inclined to agree with you that, I think that's how a lot of this started is you had women, many of whom were lesbians, who said genuinely wanted to be nice people and thought, what's the harm of having one of these poor, oppressed, marginalized sorts of women? And unfortunately, they do that and then it starts getting worse and worse and worse, and the consequences become more and more apparent. And it's very hard to tell people how to show people how to nip this in the bud before it becomes that terrible situation where now you have men completely taking over women's spaces, women's sports leagues. It's sad. It's how do we get through to those people?
I can see why she would want a trans identified man on her team because she'd win. Their team would outperform. teams that have just biological women. She keeps saying that this is such a journey or something for trans-identified men, like they're looked down upon or something. I think the trans movement has more money than God right now. They have more support than ever before. So I really don't see these people as downtrodden. I really don't see these people as someone who needs sympathy. What I see these people are trans-identified men expecting female athletes to be their emotional support dogs. And that's not what women are for. They're not here to make someone else feel better while they take away from their sport. It makes no sense to what she just said. And like, I agree with you, Sylvia, she did not think this through. And she did not think about the repercussions down the road that this is going to have for women's sports.
She mentioned a couple of things that Cheryl Reeve had said also in her statement about this isn't the most important or most problematic issue in women's sport. She used almost that same language verbatim. So it's kind of, it feels like there's a memo among the lesbians in the league that this is the stance we're taking, and this is and everybody's kind of keeping in line, even if it is disadvantageous to themselves. So something that's different in the World Tennis Association is that they've made a clear statement, where the WNBA has not made any clear definitive statement about what constitutes a woman. The WTA policy is about genetic testing. Coco Gauff was asked about her position on trans athletes, and summarily was acclaimed for her statement that she doesn't want anybody to be maligned. She wants everybody to be able to play sports. She doesn't have any beef with anybody, but she understands protecting the female sex category. And those same exact sentiments from Sophie, because the WTA or the WNBA won't take a firm stance, has her labeled transphobic and a problem. And she goes to cities for games and is booed by the fans in those stadiums, by female fans in those stadiums. It's just mind-blowing. But let me play you this clip from Linda Cohen.
But let's look big picture now. When you listen to going back to what Coco Gauff and Sophie Cunningham said about transgender athletes in women's sports, let's compare. Weren't they basically saying the same thing? Let me refresh your memory. Sophie all along has said she is not motivated by hatred toward transgender people. Coco said she was against those who want to use this as a reason to attack the trans community. Sophie said biological men or transgender women should not compete in girls' and women's sports because she wants to preserve what she says is fairness in female athletic competition. Coco said, I understand the need to account for the biological difference and the need to protect and preserve female athletic competition. Pretty much the same thing, right? I mean, what do you think? So I have a question. When you look at social media, and I know you have to take it with a grain of salt, I get that. Why was Coco Gauff applauded for her comments, which were described, let me read a few adjectives for you, were described as thoughtful, mature, powerful, while Sophie's comments were described as basically just the opposite. They were judged different. They were judged differently. Double standard, hypocrisy, and why does the media have to know what a professional athlete thinks about a political or cultural issue anyway? If that athlete feels the need or wants to make a point or wants to make a statement or wants to share her view, let her. That's great. That's fantastic. But if they choose not to, why are they badgered consistently? And why are they bullied consistently?
So she also talks about how Caitlin was asked to comment and basically gave a non-answer. She was just like, let's get back to sports. So that's also her commentary is about the bullying in both ways, that they're pressed in these interviews, in these post-game interviews, to talk about things that are unrelated to basketball. And that's been very troubling to sports fans. We're tuning in for the game, and what we're getting is a bunch of nonsense about trans stuff that has nothing to do with women's basketball. In fact, in the clip that Stephen A. that I shared earlier, towards the end of that, he talks about how Kayla McBride in the game, that game where Cheryl's wearing that shirt, she dropped 10 three-pointers in one game. It was a phenomenal game, but all anybody was talking about was trans athletes. We were talking about men in women's sports. It's really derailed the whole conversation and refocused it around the issues of men.
Fair point. I mean, I saw the Indiana versus Dallas game on TV last Friday. Super super exciting close game. And I've always been of the belief that, athletes aren't under an obligation to talk about politics. If Caitlin Clark doesn't want to chime in, I don't begrudge her for that. That's she's never been into politics. But I am curious about the reason why there's been a discrepancy in how Coco was received and how Sophie was received. I actually I didn't know that Coco said that. So I wasn't aware of that being a thing. But it's amazing the way that media and the people that feed the media can manufacture controversies when they want to and bury them when they don't. So I suspect something like that has been going on.
Yeah, exactly, because the Sophie statement was made in February. According to Sophie, she was asked that question in February, and it wasn't only resurfaced until now. So why was that? Why is now the time? All like you said, Ariane, it seems like they can manufacture or squash whatever they want to at their leisure. Is it an issue of the W just being so poorly managed? Are they so intertwined with the LGBTQ that they've lost sight of the mission? The mission is women's sports. And I mean this bit of rage bait here. Let me share this last image with you that is kind of indicative of what we've seen from the W so far. This image from their very first ever Women Crush Wednesday, they women crushed on two male athletes from Connecticut who stole women's titles, young women's titles in Connecticut. We see you, we support you, and all the other trans athletes just trying to compete in the sports they love. Heart the W for Women Crush Wednesday on two males.
I do think it's probably true. The culture of the WNBA seems to be different than the culture of world tennis, in part because it's in the US specifically, and doesn't have like some more conservative countries in the globe. But also I think it is true that there is like this perception of the WNBA as being very LGBTQ adjacent, while women's tennis, it's kind of more, I don't know, normy. And so that affects perceptions of how those sports are marketed, which is unfortunate because there's nothing inherently more LGBTQ about basketball than tennis, but it's how it is.
I'm really trying to wrap my head around the different reception of those similar statements, and the optimist in me is saying, well, the WNBA knew that this would drum up their numbers, so they thought, let's just put this out here. We'll have our people like surface this, and then we'll get everyone really angry, and they'll all be talking about the WNBA, and it'll be right when our season starts. And the optimist in me is like, maybe that's just what this is, but I don't think so. I also was trying to dissect Coco's statement and be like, what language did she use? Did she tiptoe around the eggshells just enough that she was able to evade it? Like, but I don't know, like female, she used the term female, which is teetering now, you know, like that's acknowledging biological sex. And like I got called a TERF for the first time for saying that trans women are women, but they're not female. So I was like that, and that was back in 20, what, 15, 14 that happened to me. So that was, you know, female is still like, be careful. Um, so I'm trying, yeah, I'm trying to splice theirs, but that's the issue, is that language is so policed that people can't just be open and honest about what their opinions are without really just pissing people off. When those two statements were essentially the exact same statements, slightly different wording, but the same message verbatim, essentially. So, or not essentially, just yeah, it's the same message, period, full stop. So the fact that it's like an abusive relationship, you know, you don't want to say the wrong thing or you'll feel the wrath of the gender ideologues, and it just makes everyone miserable.
I think the thing that I got from that is how the woke side finds women asking for a space of their own to be a problem. And it's a problem for men. The fact that they cannot see that whole argument and how it doesn't benefit anyone. No one's winning at this argument. If trans identified men would participate in men's sports, people would clap and show up and cheer them on. There would be no issue. But the more they try to make women's sports their domain, it's just going to take all the attention from the great sports that is happening already. It's taking all the attention away from the hardworking female athletes and all the advancements they're doing in their own career. It sucks the oxygen out of the room. And we're only doing it because men are forcing their way in. If they would stop doing it, perform in the category that they qualify for, the men's category, they could get a lot of people behind them. It would create a wind at the trans movement back, and it would be a benefit to the trans movement. But it's about validation. Like I said at the very beginning, they desperately want to be validated, but only in a specific way, and only in a way that, oddly enough, disenfranchises women. They just do not see it.
Yeah, I agree. And so I want to just round out this whole clip extravaganza with a final thought from Stephen A. Smith that kind of takes me back to the political side of this, because these are normies. So what this all has done is like bringing in Marcus from KTV. All of these people are talking about sports and trans inclusion in sports in a way that they've never talked about it before. I've been watching these guys for years commentate on the WNBA and on sports in general, and they've never mentioned any trans anything because it's not in their purview, and suddenly it is. And this is the sentiment is very much what you'd expect from normies. They don't get it. They're not with this. This doesn't make any sense to them, and it's confusing. Most of these are men. They're confused why women are going out of their way to advocate for something that would disenfranchise them. So, but thinking about it from the political side of it, this comes down to also a a left versus right type situation. And here is Stephen A., who has apparently been a Democratic voter for a long time, is kind of reached his limit and is also saying like, hey, how many more people are going to reach their limit as well?
There's no hate here. Social issues, I'm all about liberalism. I'm fiscally conservative. I can't stand paying high taxes in New York, New Jersey, and LA, or California. But I voted Democrat practically all my life. And that's not to say that I was right about doing so. Damn it. You conservative, you got good points of views. Ain't nobody hating here. Open-minded. And I'm damn sure going to be even more open-minded in the future because I don't like the direction this stuff is going. You got to have rules and regulations. You got to have law. You got to have order. You can't have this.
Super, super simple. You got words have meaning. This was a 30-minute section that I really clipped down quite heavily. But the through line being that this is just the WNBA is allowing it. They've not made any clear line in the sand. They've done nothing. That task force that they did was useless. They said nothing. And we persist. We're going to go into the 2027 season. They're going to call Royce and Enes Kanter Freedom making a mockery. They're going to call them names, say they're bad actors, when in reality, the bad actor here, in my opinion, is the WNBA and Kathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner, for not standing up for women, number one, and having their little symposium, whatever they did with their task force, and coming back and saying, this is what a woman is. A woman is born, not worn. A woman isn't something you can put on at the end of the day at your leisure because you want to opt into women's sports or you want to be validated. It's very simple, and the W and the WNBA, they should be able to get it. That's just my take.
You said it very succinctly, and I agree. And I just think the WNBA will eventually be put into a position where they have to define, and they have to define what a woman is. If they don't, then I just don't see how it would benefit anyone if they don't have a specific definition for women. It's the WNBA. I think we know what a woman is, and I just think they need to double down and get it out and say it.
And they need to decide, are they going to use the made up in your feels definition of gender ideology and gender identity, or are they going to use the actual definition that has existed since we had language?
If nothing else good has come from this, it's gotten people who otherwise wouldn't watch the WNBA to watch and care and actually start to appreciate the sport. So
all it took was some men trying to play in it.
Right. Or it could be a psyop from, within the WNBA, as you were suggesting, right. Sylvia.
Oh my goodness. Well, I thank you all for reacting to these clips, for viewing these clips, and I thank you all for watching us and sharing this experience with us, and how I'm sure you're as dumbfounded by all of it as we are. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this, and we'll be back with more. Thank you for joining us for this one. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all of those things help us with the algorithm. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
I can't wait for this misogynistic movement to be over and done with. I really can't. It is just so exhausting.